and welcome to another edition of Power of the Pen. I am LaWanna Bradford, visionary and co-founder of the Bradford Group, as well as the Bradford Group Consulting. And I am so excited that we have the amazing, creative storyteller, Mr. Stephen White. How's it going, Stephen?
Hey, LaWanna. Happy to be here and excited to see what you've been doing with the show. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited that you are doing something new, bold, exciting. And to tell the audience a little bit about who you are, as I mentioned, you are a creator, you're a storyteller, you're an author, you're also a designer, and you've been traveling the globe working with big business, government organizations to help them understand how to tap into innovation and to expand the lives and the impact that the employees and the company is having and the organizations is having around the world. And you've had the opportunity of growing up as a military brat, as an Army brat, traveling the world, but in this interesting microcosm of a community, right? So you're an African-American man who grew up in this microcosm, having a Black experience, but yet not what we consider the traditional, what we hear on stories or in the books about Black America. And I'd like you, before we really dig deep into your book, Ancient Futures, to talk about how your experience of being a Black man in America, but having a global perspective of life has shaped the design of the story, Ancient Futures.
All right. Well, yeah, that's a loaded question. And I guess I'd just start off saying that, you know, you and I grew up in a very interesting way. And I've been watching this documentary called Hypernormalization. And it talks about how easily, you know, we can be subsumed into a culture and not even really realize that that is definitely a certain stamp or a point of view. And I think about how we grew up. It's like, oh, yeah, I had a normal upbringing. Every day at 3 o'clock, the ground would shake because they're testing ordnance and bombs out in the desert. My friends have summer jobs flying drones and testing weird communications. I'm going to play football in White Sands, New Mexico, right next to Area 51, driving past who knows what. So it was a very interesting upbringing, but you and I both had such strong families, right? And, you know, both our dads were successful in the military and they taught us discipline and things like that. So you get a mix of different gifts and different things. And I look back on it and I say, I wouldn't have had it any other way. So to get to your point, being a Black man, and in America, in corporate America, growing up in the military, my dad lived that experience first. Coming into the Army as an officer and breaking some of those barriers. Your dad did it as well. But it creates somewhat of an outsider perspective. So, and I think that's always been key to my view of the world. It's a view of an outsider in certain ways, but not only in the communal sense, but also I'm an outsider with myself. Oftentimes I see myself in the third person and I see myself like I'm in a story. So maybe all that reading and stuff that I did as a kid, you know, kind of brought that into me. So I have that writer's perspective because I'm always observing either myself from the outside, but then also as I get older, able to kind of understand the meta kind of influences that life has had on me.
What you just said is very profound. And we know most writers, when they start, they tap into what they know, typically their experiences. And you describe yourself as a storyteller, a spoken word artist. How did you, as a spoken word artist, in this particular message with Ancient Futures, transition to now the graphic novel?
Well, it all kind of works with each other. You know, it's very, very dynamic. And I remember, I have to give a shout out to my good friend, Bobby Wilson, that 10 years ago, he called me and he said, White, he calls me White, NPR is having a short fiction contest. You should write something. And so basically the rules were you write a short story that could be read on the air in 3 minutes or less. And I said, yeah, I'll take that. I can do that. That'd be fun. And I remember I used to drive around a lot. I have this thing with getting in the car and just getting out and driving. And these words came to me. Driving the streets of Chicago in the dead of night is like a meditation for me. Cruise, turn, stop, repeat, drawing Nazca lines with my headlights, signaling alien astronauts, land here. I'm back in town to do a job. So that little snippet, that line became the opening line to this 3-minute fiction thing that I wrote for the contest. And it went on to talk about this guy that was in Chicago, but he didn't want to be because he saw his fiance die, but he was on a job to find a rogue professor that had caused quite a stir among the people in high places. They said his invention threatened global security. His ethics were unsound. He needed to be stopped, right? So I had this iconic professor that this guy is searching for, and at the end, this character, Valentino Cruz, is put to a decision by this professor, put to a decision that will ultimately change his life. So somehow I wrote all that in 3 minutes. That was my 3-minute story. Maybe NPR was like, wait a minute, that's going a little over the 3 minutes. So you talk about how does spoken word kind of get into this, right? So I wrote that, and then the story became something that I would go to open mics and spoken words, and I would literally just read my story. And I found that people really liked it, and they were like, who is this character and all this? And so for years and years, I started producing, I do multimedia presentations where I had screens up and I'm telling the story of Valentino. And at the same time, I was also tapping into some other things. I'm fascinated by ancient cultures. And I feel like at a time when a society reaches its desperation point, it goes back to the last time where things worked. And I found myself hearkening back to ancient cultures and kind of seeing what my ancient heritage was, and fascination with ancient Egypt and, the School of Athens and mystery schools and, the ancient, the cults, even the Christian cults, right? John the Baptist and Jesus, they just don't come out of nowhere like that. They were part of mystery schools that, probably a lot of mainstream Christians maybe don't even know about. That's why they're living in caves and drinking milk and honey and those kind of things. And so I started looking into the ancient origins of my religion. I grew up Christian, of other religions. And I started kind of developing my own voice around that. So that's where the ancient part came in. I wrote a poem called The First Ancient. It started off, I am the first ancient, born of Ata. I bring worlds into existence through the power of sound. Om. Heavenly bodies become human temples through the power of the sun. Artist, lover, king, magician, my archetypes blend into one. I walk through catacombs of chromosomes wearing shades of ancient knowledge, tinted yellow and orange. My blood is color-coded by the science of the sun. So I'm writing these kind of poems too, and so over the years I started to say, I want to write something that's going to bring my ancient stuff together with kind of more of a futuristic world that Valentino was living in. And I'll pause there, and I can keep talking about how the pandemic spurred things on.
Good, and it's interesting that you quoted that, because I wrote that spoken word, piece of your spoken word down. Yeah. And what I like about this, and speaking to our listening audience, especially to women, so many women today, Stephen, are challenged with the feeling of just being accepted. And I'm saying self-acceptance, because we have an issue with how society views us as we're aging. Their society is more forgiving to men than women. We are bombarded with imagery in magazines, on TV, all these apps, filters, everything, and we're fighting our own selves. But when you said, my blood is color-coded by the science of the sun, the power in that is like, if we really understand, like you said, going back to the ancient,
Yes.
The Ancient of Days was a song. But when we go back to that, right, to our truth, to our past, to our ancestry, and we realize the richness that flows through us.
Yes.
Then you can stand up in power and in truth. It's like, okay, so what? This may be your standard, but I'm owning, I'm occupying, I'm dominating this space and time, because it was such a time as this for me to even exist.
Yes, and to understand your heritage, right? Being a human being is a tremendous blessing, right? They say that the gods, I think Perseus said the gods, they admire us, right? Because we are both immortal and mortal at the same time. So to answer your question about, the unique position of your audience and a lot of women, is it goes back to a couple of things. Number one, understanding that heritage. The Hermetica teaches that first there was Ata, the creator came out first. And then the cosmos was the mistress of the creator, the beauty, right, of the earth and of nature. But the creation was not complete until humans came, because humans could appreciate the creator, could appreciate it all. And you know what the Hermetica says? The highest order of humans is the arts and the sciences. That's what we bring to the creation, the reflection, right? So that the creator can say, yes, someone gets it, right? So we understand that's our heritage. But something else is very serious that I want to talk about too, and I want to divert with a quick story.
Sure.
I'm happy to say I went to the Institute of Design at Illinois Tech. It's right down the street here in Chicago. And I've been invited back to speak, and I do an orientation with the new students. And I opened it up, and I had a little picture of a person. I started saying, let's look at your life up until now. Most of you are about 25 years old. I said, you were born into a family that you didn't choose. You were also born into a geography and a country, a political system that you didn't choose. You had a religion that you were brought into that you didn't choose at all. You went to an educational system that had its own, objectives that you didn't choose. And I kind of went through this all the influences that are put on us just living just out the box, right?
Right.
So even though we might have this great heritage, culture is actually a limiting device on us. Right. It actually can put us into a stamp and a mold. So I'm talking to these students, and I just gave that quick opening of all these things. And I said, at this point in your life, at 25 years old, how many of you think you are a free agent of your life right now, or a product of a system? Now, this was my first thesis. I was a little nervous asking this question, because I've developed a metacognition course based on this through some of my experience in working with the military and other things. I'm trying to get people to think bigger about themselves. So I asked this question, and I thought, I might not be, this is going to be a revolt here. They're going to be so mad. I thought they was going to just rise up. And there was about 6 seconds of silence. And everyone basically was nodding, saying, yeah, we're a product. We're a product of all of these systems, right? And the one thing that was interesting, then I said, well, what are you going to do about it? And that's where the message didn't seem to go much farther, because people want to be told what to do about it. But I'll say that too, that as a woman, you are born into certain things that culture will also put on you, right? So the question is, for everybody, is, are you going to wake up? What are you going to do about that? awareness is the first step of just kind of like, the 12 steps. You have to really grapple with that. And years ago, I really grappled with that. And I decided that I wanted to break from my conditioning. I wanted to see what I was beyond that. And in some ways, it's not such a break. In some ways, it's just a perspective change of understanding and maybe integrating it in a way. But I think those two things are very basic things that everyone has to do. But who has the time? No, everyone's running on and on. Who's having the time to reflect on, what, I've become unconsciously? But really, that's where the juice is. It is in the unconsciousness. It's in the unknown, right? Dr. Joe Disperza has meditations that talk about, we all know about the known. Reflect on the unknown. That's where the possibilities come from. And that's kind of where, we're going. I'm going to pause there again, but I think trying to answer that question, hope that was in vein with what you were looking for.
Oh, that was good. And it was very, very powerful. And, we lost Bob Proctor. I think it was yesterday. And Bob Proctor was heavy into quantum physics and talking about the power of the mind and understanding that we need to live in the higher faculties. We need to live in the seat of imagination and intuition. And so often, as you said, we being the products that we become very limited and short-sighted. If it's not known based upon our experiences, our I guess I would call it our primary recollection, then we can't move beyond that. But when we tap into, going back to ancient futures, when we tap into the ancient and we allow that which already is within us to guide us, and then we have the hope of the future married with the power of the now, life becomes so expansive. One of my friends, she often says it becomes delicious when you really get there. And I remember listening to something, you were giving a talk and you said, and I'm paraphrasing this, but basically it's like when you are doing what everyone else is doing, life's boring. Yeah. It's very predictable. It's very routine. And that's why I brought you on the Power of the Pen series, because I want to challenge those authors that want to come on this platform. Again, it's open to all genres, but tap into being as transparent and as exploratory as you can in sharing your story. And and the so what factor, you're sharing it for what? Just to say, yeah, check, I have a book. Or with Ancient Futures and what you're doing, Stephen, it's like there's a deeper message.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that.
To be better, right?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because I know you've written great books too, and you're a bestseller, and you could probably attest to how just the embarking on the journey just changes so many things, right? So I'm writing this graphic novel that it's not even out yet, right? But I've been speaking, I've been talking to people, because it's about something I'm excited about. It's about more than the graphic novel. That becomes a great artifact, right? And a thing that's going to be awesome, and I can't wait for it to come out. But at the same time, I'm excited about that people are interested in my ideas, and that's really what it's about. It gives you a platform. So that's why I really encourage people to kind of take that thing that you're into, right? And once you're really doing that, if you have that, it's going to turn you on in different ways. And a great example is, I have a couple of great authors I like to quote. And there's this author, Grant Morrison, and he's a famous comic book author. But what he talks about is this idea of art imitating life. And you can actually really, with your imagination, once you start delving deep into this work, you can begin to rewrite your life as well. Like, my life has totally changed through the process of doing this project, right? I began to see myself more like the different characters and the people I interact with. It's funny, I saw myself as Valentino, right? Because I have, done the the global work and worked with shadowy enforcers and those kind of things. But when I talked to Aaron McConnell, who is my great illustrator partner that I found during the pandemic, he's talking about, I feel like I'm Valentino Cruz and Seven is the professor because he lured me into this life, right? So this shadowy world I've created is now bringing in other people, right? And this message about dope life, I want to talk about that quickly because that's kind of what you're kind of referring to. In that original story that I wrote, this professor's rogue technology was that he was able to transport people to another place, or at the time I called it a better place.
Can you pause right there, because I want to just orient our audience. So one of the, and I'm going to just parallel it to the movie The Matrix, right? And having choice, and then asking ourselves, what is really reality? Okay, I'm gonna turn it back over to you now.
Exactly. So dope life is about that choice. So I'm using that as a metaphor, right? So I'm using this professor that comes with this technology, but guess what? The whole system opposes him, right? So imagine if someone came out on the scene and said, "Hey, everybody, I have a way to just press a button, you're off to your best life." Who in this current systems we've been talking about are gonna like that? Right? So it's, so imagine, I have this thing where it's like even the Pope, it says, this is crazy. This is like a digital rapture. We got to stop this guy, right? Big technology, they're going to make all our other stuff obsolete because we're just, weaker versions of that because we're all promising a better life. But so I begin to take a look at our systems and whether they have our best in mind. And so Ancient Futures begins to reflect on our own world and the contradictions, right? So we have legal bodies and countries that are supposed to protect us. But as we see in the pandemic, that's becoming more and more fractured. So Ancient Futures is tapping into this phenomenon of the world is slowly devolving in front of us, but at the same time, the potential of our own consciousness can free us and take us in so many different ways. So I'm almost like saying, like, why are we relying on these systems? You've got your own heritage, your own mojo, and you can, it's time to kind of own up to yourself, because otherwise you're going to be taken along, swung with the tide.
And that's really powerful. So it's basically identifying that we are co-creators.
Yes, absolutely.
And we can either say, all right, it just is, and I just go with the flow, and wherever the tides turn, that's where I go. Or I can say, no, I'm going to create a different path for myself. And I think we can all relate to where we've made choices in our lives. Mm-hmm. And even though we may be okay with that choice, we tend to reflect, well, what if I had gone left?
Yeah.
Right? What if I had gone to school here versus there? Or what if I had said yes to that proposal?
Do you have any big ones that you say, oh, I should have definitely gone the other way on that one in your life?
Believe it or not, the one thing that I think about often, and you remember our friend Vernon Grigg, who performed with Up With People. Well, I had also received a scholarship to go, and I didn't. And I often wonder, how would my life be different had I taken that, performing on, global stage, different countries, and then coming back and saying, okay, now I'm ready for school.
You know what? I have some good news for you, LaWanna.
Yes.
So you mentioned quantum physics, right?
Yes.
So in quantum physics, there's a theory. This guy Everett came up with this theory called the many worlds theory. And in quantum physics, that a particle, an atom can be both a particle and a wave. And usually they go around as particles, but then they get into a superposition, right? And the superposition is where right before it makes a choice. So like in CERN, where they have the Hadron Collider, they're sending them around and they're smashing these atoms. When the atoms go into the superposition, the universe makes a copy of every potential that it could go in. And according to quantum physics, the numbers and everything, that atom is actually in another universe doing something different, and they're all connected by what they call spooky action. Now, I'm saying that you that accepted that, you're out there dancing somewhere, singing up with people right now. That's happening in another version of you, and that's kind of what the Dope Life app is about.
That's pretty powerful. And, but the other thing, and I'd like to get your take on this, when we look back at our lives and we see the choices that we've made and we look at them with a critical eye, for me at least, I'm able to see that connecting thread, that they've built upon themselves, even though I may not have realized it at the time. But when I look back, it's like, oh, wow, all of this for this time.
Yeah, and that's a great way to look at it too. I also agree that, because I don't really look back and say, oh, I wish I would have made that decision. Sure, there's a few, but now I see my life as everything leading up to where I am now. So those things that were regrets, or the things that I was ashamed of, like that was part of my kind of awakening, was all those things that I was ashamed of as I was coming up. I was a nerdy kid. I was this, I was that. What I found is that ultimately God said, that's how I made you. That's what made you who you are today. If I hadn't taken that path, I wouldn't be 7 right now. I wouldn't be writing Ancient Futures, right? I wouldn't have had to have that journey, right? All of us have to have a journey, but we need to have conflict. We need to have competition. We need to have, a varied life in order to get somewhere. So yeah, it's a great way to think about it, is like, yeah, you didn't do that up with people, but you're doing a similar thing, uplifting people in ways, and like it all kind of came together anyway, right?
I like that.
You should have Vernon on this show, or one of your shows. That'd be awesome.
Exactly. Now, I want you to talk a little bit before I give you the stage about your 3 characters. So you have Valentino Cruz, your 3 main characters. You have the professor, and then you have Zora. And can you explain how we as a reader can find relatability in each of these 3 characters?
Yeah, I think that Valentino is a very relatable character. He comes across as a open canvas in some ways, and it's seen through his eyes. But I think what is important, and you mentioned something, I just want to focus on, the Great Resignation, right? Mm-hmm. This is looming over us as we talk about people changing their lives. So this is why I think Ancient Futures is so timely, right? Valentino is also a guy that's at a decision point where he's working for this shadowy organization, and sure, it was cool and all that, but he's been pushed to do too many things that he doesn't want to do. So he's at that decision point. So I think everyone can relate with that. And 30 to 40% of people have quit their jobs, in the last 6 to 8 months. So a lot of people are going to be relating to Valentino. The other character, Zora, represents almost a shadow side of Valentino. And I think this is also relatable, because a lot of us, a lot of people, as they let go, unplug, they're also unleashing desire, right? And Zora represents desire. And there's somewhat of a red, in the book, one of her colors is red, right? It's the desire, but she's cool with it. She's fun. She's happy. She's energized. So I think even that kind of side people can relate to. And then the professor is another character. He represents kind of the zeitgeist of technology in our lives, and what we expect of it and what we fear about it. But he's also somewhat of a wise man, and he's the one that, guides Valentino in a way. So he's almost a guru, but he might be a villain. He's wanted by Interpol. So in issue 1, I'm just setting them up. I can't wait to hear your review. Maybe you're going to be saying something like, I feel like we just set something up. But then there's other characters too. And, we're going to reference ancient characters. I'm going back all the way to ancient scriptures to talk about, the angels and the watchers that were sent to guard humankind and how they got enmeshed in our affairs. So drawing forbidden knowledge in the ancient past, forbidden knowledge today. There's nothing different. It's always causes a ruckus.
Since you chose to not take this as a traditional science fiction novel, but rather a graphic novel, can you take us on that journey? And why do you think this may open up a greater awareness to people? Maybe it will feel less intimidating than a traditional sci-fi that's trying to deliver the same message.
Yeah, I came up, in that hardcore sci-fi, riding my book to the bookstore, used bookstore with a stack, coming home so excited, reading The Lord of the Rings, Robert Heinlein, all that kind of stuff. So I'm a big book guy. It's Chronicles of Narnia. And, but today, as I just felt like I wanted to do something that was a little more nimble. Like, I think people have shorter attention spans and they're a lot more visual. And I thought it would challenge me to, because I also like writing in kind of a short format. I like dialogue. I like poetry. So I thought it would just be a cool way to kind of be more open to a broader audience than, getting that thick book. And I also want to experiment with, maybe hear from your audience if they like Audible, because I love Audible and I love narrating my stuff, as you can tell. So maybe I can try to do an Audible version.
Oh, I think it'll be amazing. I want to ask you one more question. You said we often don't see what's in front of us, and reality isn't what we often think it is. What do you want to say there?
Now,
and then I want you to tell us about this whole Kickstarter.
Okay. So the question is, and I'll reference Donald Hoffman. He's a professor at UC Irvine, and he has a great TED Talk called, I believe, The Case Against Reality, or Do We See Reality as It Really Is? And in this, he basically proves scientifically that the world we see is actually generated by our mind, right? So we have enough photon receptors in the front of our eyes to be the best camera. So if we were just capturing what we're seeing, we have enough there, but we have like twice as much in the back of our head. And scientists are now showing us that we need that much visual power to really generate the reality we're in. Now, he uses the metaphor of a virtual reality headset. So every living being has a different Umwelt, right? A way to see, a set of senses and things, right? So humans have one, a dog has another, a dolphin's another, and that's how we see the world. But we have mistaken that headset that we have for our actual reality. And why do we do that? Evolution did that as a gift for us, because if we had to see everything that was involved, we couldn't function. Think about if you want to do something on your computer. If you had to know all about the transistors and the diodes and moving the stuff around, you'd never send the email. Evolution did the same thing for us, just for our fitness, to survive, to raise offspring to 18, to eat, to live. Very basic human things. This whole world is constructed. And then the artificial world we put on it just hypers it more, right? We have food in our face, we have sex in our face, we have all these things because we know that's what we're so tuned to. But our ultimate reality is much more complex.
I love that.
All right.
Well, Stephen, I know February 14th is a big day.
Yes.
For Ancient Futures. So I want you to tell us a little bit about that, how people can continue to follow you and maybe even be a part of this journey.
All right, we have a question. Please proceed.
If life unfolds as a series of choices and we exist in parallel universes, do you believe that no matter where you existed on the planet, you would have eventually been introduced to Christianity? Okay,
so the question at hand is, it's an old question, actually. This is a question that people always ask, right? So I'm gonna kind of turn it on its head a bit, and because it's been answered before by ancient scriptures. You look at Psalms, the Psalms of David. You look at the teachings of the Hermetica. All the major religions kind of have the same idea that God created the cosmos. What is the cosmos? the nature, the planets, the zodiac, the environment we live in. This is a reflection of the Creator. This is God. And humankind came along with a special place as to complete the creation, to reflect and appreciate and worship through the arts and sciences and different ways that we can appreciate creation. So you can see we're on this continuum of knowing God. So to ask if anyone is not aware or does not feel that, most of us have forgotten it because of the vagaries of culture and conditioning. So definitely the answer would be, I can take the answer in a different direction too. If you are in a multiverse and you're experiencing all that life has, you're going to experience the light and the dark. So yes, would you have been introduced to Christianity? Probably. Would you have been introduced to Islam? Probably. All of the others, right? You might have been involved in World War II, you know, in the Third Reich. You could be all kinds of things. You might be a rock star. So think about that when you think about the multiverse and all the different ways that we live. And science is now even showing us that our human DNA has enough computing power to not only plan, but to record, build all of that. A multiverse of opportunities can be encoded in our own DNA. We are our own fascinating computer. So to me, that's a nice reinforcement from science that shows us that we are built with almost an infinite capability. We come from an infinite place. So yes, we are going to experience all that the universe has to offer, and that's part of the message of Dope Life. It's about being aware of that and not being so tied to one life, maybe wanting to experiment and do something a little bit different. So that's the answer to the question. I look forward to more. Thank you. All right. So thank you so much, LaWanna. I'm so happy to be on the Power of the Pen announcing the launch of Ancient Futures, a graphic novel about Afro-cyberpunk assassins at the end of space-time, at humankind's ultimate inflection point. I know that's a mouthful, and I know you want to read it now. And this novel is really capturing on the zeitgeist of our times, as we've said. This is something for everybody. It has a character, that Valentino Cruz, that is facing an ultimate decision. It has a sexy, powerful partner that is trying to push things in a different way. And then over it all, we have the systems that try to oppose us. Thank you so much, and welcome to Ancient Futures.
Was that amazing? We were here with Stephen White talking about his new graphic novel release that is scheduled to release on February 14th called Ancient Futures. Ancient Futures, it's a graphic novel, and it is really for a time such as this, a time when the world is shifting and changing, and there are a lot of questions, as he mentioned, whether it's about our systems, our norms, mores, just our own way of thinking and processing and seeing how we show up in the world and allowing us to challenge those paradigms. And he said something that was very profound is, are you a product of all that you sit in? Are you a product? And if you are, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do to change things so that now you rise above being a product and becoming a co-creator of this amazing life that you want for yourself, the dope life? So again, follow Stephen on ancientfutures.by7 on Instagram. And it has been a pleasure to have you on Power of the Pen.